Hello and welcome. I'm going to let people get their audio connected and get situated. We are right at 2:01, so we'll give people just a couple of minutes as they filter in from the waiting room. We're really glad that you're here with us today. I will say, I'll probably say it a few times as people come in, we would love, if you're comfortable, for you to turn your cameras on. It makes us feel like we're with you in the room if we can see your faces. And we'll just ask you to remain muted, but we'd love to see you if you're willing to turn your camera on, willing and able. I see a few more people still connecting to audio. We've got some people filtering in. And it's like a really great group today. So glad you're here with us. I will get us started, and I have a feeling a few more people will be coming in as we begin, but welcome to everyone. Congratulations on your admission to Syracuse University and the College of Visual and Performing Arts. My name is Jenny Saluti. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Admissions for the college, and we're just so glad you're here, and we're excited that you're considering joining our community. I have just a few housekeeping items before I introduce Dean Tick to give us opening remarks. And so we'll ask that you remain muted, of course. I think everybody's a pro at Zoom these days, so that's probably not a surprise. As I said to some of the people as they were here earlier, if you're willing to turn your camera on, we'd love to see your faces. And I'm going to recommend that you put your view into speaker mode because we're a big group today. And that will allow you to see the speakers a little easier, but also us feel that we're together and sort of in the room together. Lastly, if you haven't already, for students, please rename yourself with your name connected to your application, just so I can know who's here and how to reconnect with you. That would be helpful. And also, we will have time for some questions at the end. So you're welcome to put those into the chat along the way if they pop into your head, or hold on to them until the end. But I'll be moderating questions, and we hope to have time at the end to get to them. But I will say, try to address those questions to the alumni that are speaking, rather than, let's say, questions about curriculum, your curriculum or financial aid or things like that, which I would be more than happy to help you with later, but use this opportunity to learn about the experience from the alumni's point of view. So with that, I would like to introduce Michael Tick, Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Well, students, you've come this far. Congratulations on your acceptance. And families and friends who are joining us today, I also offer you my congratulations because you're all considering this very important decision. And I will be brief in my remarks so that we have really more time for the most important people on this Zoom. Just a couple of remarks. First, the university is planning to return to normal in the fall with in-person instruction, and also our full portfolio of global campuses will be open, including those in New York City and Los Angeles. Well, you probably know this when you researched Syracuse University, but Syracuse University has alumni all over the globe. And VPA, of course, has alumni all over the globe. And many of our alums serve on either our senior college council or our young alumni council. Our two consuls engage with us throughout the year. They engage with our students, our faculty, our staff in so many ways, from providing internships and career advice and philanthropy, to serving on search committees, to supporting recruiting events such as the one today. And with that, I'm gonna thank Keith, Julie, and Eric for participating today, taking time out of their busy schedules to answer questions that you will have. And now with that, I'm going to turn the program over to my colleague, and that is Professor of Music Education, Elisa Ducaney, Dr. Elisa Ducaney, who will monitor this program, and she will also introduce herself. So thanks, everybody.
Good afternoon. My name is Elisa Ducaney. As Dean Tick said, I'm a professor of music education in the Sentinel School of Music. I'm also Associate Dean for Research, Graduate Studies, and Internationalization. And I'm really grateful that Jenny Saludi asked me to moderate this panel, because I think that this panel provides a window, right? A way to see what the future can look like for those of you who are now considering pursuing a career in visual and performing arts, design, and communication. Our conversation with our distinguished alumni, who will introduce themselves in a little bit, it's a testimony that with imagination, dedication, a very excellent education, and hard work, you can build a meaningful career that will positively impact our communities and our world. So I am going to go directly to them because they have a lot to share with us. I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves, say their name, their professional title, the year they graduated from SU, including their major, and any other information that you believe it is appropriate for this time. So I'm going to start with Eric.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you all. My name is Eric Jarbo. I'm currently Executive Vice President of Strategy and Corporate Operations at a production company you've never heard of, Motion Picture Corp of America, but you have seen a lot of our content. We did 9 of Netflix's first 12 Christmas films. We do about 10 to 12 Christmas films for Hallmark every year. We have 2 series on Hallmark, and we'll be doing some stuff for CBS, NBC, Peacock, and a few others this year. I graduated in '09, musical theater and economics double major, and I can't say enough good things about Syracuse. I always say I got my MBA at USC, but I'm much more connected to this university, and I do think that they look out for their students quite a bit better. So, is that everything that you wanted to ask?
That's perfect. Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Next, Julie, please.
Hello, everyone. I am Julie Kobaki. I am the Vice President of Promotion at 300 Entertainment, which is the #1 independent record label in the US, home of 3-time Grammy winner Megan Thee Stallion now. So it's been a very, very exciting year at my company. We'll get into this later too, but I started right out of college at Atlantic Records. So I spent my career at major labels and made it to this independent in the last 2.5 years. I graduated in 2000 in music industry with also a concentration in cello performance. So I did a bunch of the performance side of the School of Music, as well as getting the business side in the music industry. And just like Eric said, Syracuse made me who I am today. I know without a doubt, and I do everything I can to make sure that the students coming out feel the same way about Syracuse. If I can help them in their careers in any way, that's what I want to keep giving back to the university. So there you have it.
Thank you, Julie. Wonderful. I can't wait for this conversation. And next, I'm going to ask Keith to introduce himself.
Hi guys, I'm frozen, so I'm hoping you can at least hear me. Everyone else is, I have a snapshot of everyone else. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear and see you well.
Okay, great. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the founder and CCO of Cartwright. We're an advertising agency here in Los Angeles. I'm also the co-founder of Saturday Morning, which is a nonprofit organization that was started in 2016. I graduated in 1997. It seems so long ago. I was a work study actually in the dean's office. So I've been connected to Syracuse and VPA since my very first day on campus. And it's just been incredible how I continuously call back on all the things that I learned and all the valuable lessons that I got from the School of Visual and Performing Arts, specifically comm design, communication design, which was my major and emphasis. It's been so rewarding from early on to now, coming back to the school, connecting with alumni. I've never regretted, not for one day, attending Syracuse, and I hope this conversation will at least bring to light some of the incredible things that you might be able to experience if you decide to become a part of the family.
Thank you, Keith. And you can stay right there because I think I'm going to ask the first question directly to you since we can hear and see you so well.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about your career path. How did your Syracuse education impact and set up you for success immediately after you graduated and then in the long run?
Yeah, as soon as I graduated, I moved to New York and I started my career as a graphic designer. So I moved between design firms. I spent some time freelancing in the beginning and then found a home at a design firm very quickly. Thereafter, I worked at Myers Design. I worked at Landor. I freelanced at Pentagram. But from my first, I'd say 2 or 3 years in design, I got a phone call from DDB, which is an advertising agency. They had seen my work and asked me if I'd be interested in having a conversation with them, and I did. And that brought me to DDB in Dallas, and that kind of launched my proper advertising career. I moved on from DDB to Ogilvy, where I spent 6 years in New York, and that's where I really cut my teeth in the business and started to do some really great work. I worked on IBM. I worked on Miller, and American Express was one of the big accounts that really got a lot of attention for me and really bolstered my portfolio. I went on to work at a bunch of other places. I worked at Chiat Day. I worked at Wieden & Kennedy, specifically on Nike and Adidas. So I started to segue into a lot of sports and culture brands. That essentially propped up my an intuition that I could do this on my own, specifically around my interests. And I started my own agency. My first agency was Union Made Creative, and then that transitioned into Cartwright. So it was an interesting career. I've moved around a lot, but I always felt that it was important for me to sort of get an understanding of different styles and different ways of working, and that has done so much good for me and how I'm managing my own business.
Thank you, Keith. Julie, same question for you. How did your education prepare you for the immediate things after graduation in the long run?
So like I said, I got into Syracuse on cello scholarship. However many of you out there I'm talking that are in the same boat of either going into music education or music performance, you may have a real idea of what you want to do, what your calling sort of is. Most people want to go out there and perform. I have come from a family of musicians, and I knew I didn't want to perform, which is interesting, getting a scholarship on the cello and spending my entire life practicing. And it was when I found the music industry program at Syracuse, and happened upon it. I went to a great high school, and like my college counselor never was like, oh, Syracuse would be great for you, which I will never let her live down to this day, because it was the perfect school for me, because I was able to keep my cello going. That certainly aided me in getting into Syracuse. And then I had this wonderful industry background to start learning about. I did all of my internships in college in classical music because that's sort of always what I knew. I did my first internship at the Boston Symphony. I managed a string quartet, a professional string quartet on campus, did a bunch of events with them throughout my senior year at college. And I graduated and moved to New York. My sister lived here, so I was able to live with her and start looking. And I started temping at Carnegie Hall, thinking I'd go into classical music. There is a mafia of Syracuse graduates in the music industry on the side that I'm in now. And I was temping at Carnegie Hall and just sort of, I was answering like the front desk, nothing, I wasn't changing the world at Carnegie Hall, but sort of was like, I'm 22, I just graduated from New York or from Syracuse. And maybe I'll just try to get an assistant job at a record label. And like textbook. found Lori Simpson, who happened to be a Syracuse graduate, was the vice president at Warner Brothers Records. Found her. I had a little bit of a personal connection with her as well. She met with me, she didn't have anything for me, got my resume down to HR. I met with them, boom, boom, boom. And 3 months later, it was actually April of 2001, 20 years ago, that I got hired at Atlantic Records. I started as an assistant in radio promotion, and what Syracuse did was give me such a great overview of the music industry. Some people know they want to go in A&R and sign bands, and they know they want to do these certain things. I had this broad overview of it, but my first job was in radio promotion. I worked for an incredible woman who still runs the radio promotion department at Atlantic, who was such a great mentor that then I say, if I would have started as an assistant in publicity, I'd be a publicist now. If I started as an assistant in marketing, I'd be a marketing manager now. It just so happened there was radio promotion, and that's what then catapulted my career. So I spent 15 years at Atlantic. Then I moved over to Island Records for 3 years to run their artist promotion development department. That took me out of the radio world a little bit. I didn't have as much contact with the artists, which is one thing I really loved. And 2.5 years ago, I was approached by 300 Entertainment, who started as a hip hop label and wanted to start expanding their roster and what they work to radio and everything, and taking someone like a Megan Thee Stallion and taking her over to pop radio, which is what I specialize in. So everything that Syracuse taught me through my time there, I was never pigeonholed in one thing I could do or one thing I could learn about the music industry, which I think was so fantastic. Then along the way, the amount of Syracuse graduates that I bump into, that people know that about me, that we sort of all stick together, has just been an incredible part of my career.
Thank you, Julie. It's really nice to hear all the turns, right, in your career, and the people that you met because you were at SU,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunities that you had as someone who was a musician and a player, but who did not really see performance as the outcome of that training. So
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you, and Keith. And now, Eric, your turn to answer our question.
Sure. Let's see. My first job came from a cabaret that I actually put on at Syracuse. So in my senior year in November, I put on a cabaret, which some people do for class. I just did for fun. And it was like all the music I wrote while I was at Syracuse. It was like half musical theater, half my rock band from home, because that was a plan at the time. And it went really well. And there was a producer from ABC's Castle in the audience that was just in town because they had a daughter in the drama department that was in a show, but we didn't really know each other at the time. It wasn't anything like that. But she came and watched the cabaret, and she came up afterwards. She's like, well, let's stay in touch. What do you want to do? I'm like, well, I want to go to LA and produce. And I have the econ and the musical theater. I want to combine the creative and the business and go do that. Because the industry is usually you do one or the other. And those that can do both, I think, have a bit of a competitive advantage. So we stayed in touch. And then that summer, so that was November senior year, flash forward about 8 months later in August, I got a phone call out of the blue saying that they had an open production assistant slot on Castle, and would I like to have it? So I was fortunate enough to move to LA with a job in TV. And ever since, every paycheck that I've had is from the entertainment industry. I worked on Castle for 2 seasons. And look, the drama part is amazing. We could look, it was really great to talk to writers and understand who's the character, what's in the way. It was really great to look in casting sessions, and you could tell who was connected to their scene partner. And to this day, I work with a lot of people that cannot tell in an audition who's really connected or not, because they just don't have that creative sense. They've never acted, they've never been in a scene with someone else. And that actually makes, I think, quite a bit of a difference. Thereafter, about 2 years on Castle, and then I went to work at my current company. I actually started as the CEO's assistant, and we only did like 2 hours of scripted programming. And Hollywood can still kind of be a little bit of an apprentice career path, especially in the smaller companies, which is kind of unique. But they had a lot of people leave, and there was a lot of opportunity that I just went up. So like within 2 years I was producing, I've now been there for almost 11 years, and I've produced over 80 films and over 100 episodes of TV with them. So, you know, I just, the creative comes very easily. It's almost, it's not, you don't have to work hard for it because you were just engrossed in it for so long that and I think it gives you a huge competitive advantage. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Eric. It's really interesting to see that because you're in a university SSU, like with one of the best BFA musical theater, and had access to a BA in economics, and was able to kind of come up with something that prepared you for work that I don't know if you had imagined would be like that, but it is so exciting. And you got to sing in the most selective choir that the university has, which is the university singer. So I don't know how you were able to build all of that into your experience here, but I think it's really quite exciting.
Thanks. A few AP credits helped, but it's possible. Even if admissions told me I couldn't double major, but there was a way. Just figured it out.
That's a great lesson right there, right? People tell you maybe no, but you say, maybe there is a way.
Musical theater has 30 credits for academic in it, and I think you needed 33 to get the econ degree. So it wasn't crazy. You just had to make sure that the schedules lined up and figure it out. And if you're honors, you can pick your classes before everyone else, so you don't have to be worried about getting locked out. So that's another just advantage to look out for.
Excellent, excellent tips. So I'm going to change a little bit. And this question has 3 parts to it. If you don't remember all 3 parts, that's okay. You can stick with just one. And I'm going to start with Julie. Julie, what are you most proud of your Syracuse University experience? And perhaps if you could tell us one of your most meaningful and memorable experiences, and a bonus of what do you regret not taking advantage of?
So I would say what I'm most proud of is the fact that I stuck through and have a whole cello performance major out of my degree. And I have this career so I guess in short, I am a musician in the music industry, which sometimes is hard to come by. And you know, so a lot of other colleges have music industry programs, and it's within the business school, or if you're just looking at a liberal arts school, you'd have to be a music major and you'd have to be a business major, and none of those classes would ever come together. And the fact that at Syracuse, I was able to be a musician, do ear training and theory, and believe me, there were some days that like I didn't ever want to know that much about music, and I was like, well, how is this going to help me one day? But I'll tell you, growing up as a musician, I spent my summers 8-week music camp at Interlochen, and I was always Julie the cellist in high school, and you live this like little musician life. And then I got to Syracuse, was able to expand on that, gave a senior recital and all of that. And then when I graduated, I was 22, and like kind of you just want to get out of your mold and I didn't tell anyone at Atlantic Records that I had this musical background. And probably a year into being at Atlantic, my best friend who was an assistant with me knew this about me and tells my boss, like randomly in the bathroom, oh, you know, Julie's a cellist. And my boss comes out of that, you never told me, you have to tell every artist this, they will respect you so much more. And then I go like fast forward to the rest of my career, and I'm in like a studio with Jay-Z, and my boss is telling Jay-Z, while he's trying to eat a banana and we're about to get him on morning show radio, that like, oh, did you know Julie's a cellist and her brother-in-law is the principal trumpet of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra? It's this thing to the musicians I'm talking out there too. We grow up in this world of music, and you get out and people are so impressed by it. I thought I grew up going to orchestra. I thought everybody did orchestra. And then you get out there. Now I'm in the music industry, and the fact that I play the cello, Bruno Mars knows this about me, Ed Sheeran, all of these artists then go and respect you so much more because you have that. So there was like a teeny tiny time in my teen years that I wanted to give it all up. I was tired of practicing. So to have Syracuse give me a scholarship for that, me follow through with all of that and get out into my career, not becoming a cellist, but using it. It was on this very Zoom last April that we were working a little song by Megan Thee Stallion, Savage. And I said to everybody, all the seniors on that call, that working in radio promotion for pop radio, I was gonna learn Savage on the cello and put it on my Instagram. And then all these programmers who, I was like, they're gonna see it and they're gonna laugh at whatever. And you can go to my Instagram now, Julie Kobaki, and see my video of that. But it's because I kept up with cello. It's because Syracuse gave me that base of it. And then the alumni went and gave me, the rest of it to get out there and to find my place in the industry. So I would say obviously a memorable experience would be the fact that I gave a senior recital, a full recital on my own. And again, if you're at a conservatory, it's like everybody goes to everybody's recitals, whatever. Syracuse is this amazing place where you meet everybody from all walks of life. There was a guy on my freshman year floor that when I told him I played the cello, he was picturing a harp, like he didn't even know what a cello was. All these people then came to my senior recital, to see what that something of my life was. I think that's all the first half of the question. One thing which is totally off the subject of anything, I wish I would have stuck with the language. And I don't know how realistic that is, although Eric just said if you can find a way and add the credits. I did my semester abroad, which is an amazing experience, assuming COVID gets itself under control and you guys can get back out and explore that. Syracuse has an amazing abroad program. I picked England, London, because I could speak English. I wish freshman year I would have, classes are 4 days a week, so that may deter you. I don't know what deterred me, but I wish I would have taken French or Italian and I would have gone and done my semester. London was incredible, but to go and have one of those experiences in another country in college, I think would have been amazing and have, a chance to learn the language. There, I've said my piece.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I think languages are amazing, and studying abroad is certainly a landmark of the opportunities that we have here. So I'm going to segue into Eric, because I know Eric also spent a semester in London. Eric, same question for you. Do I need to repeat the question?
Yeah, in a second. I'll just briefly touch on mine. Syracuse, I had no idea when I came to Syracuse. I kind of discovered it sophomore year. Syracuse has one of the best abroad programs in the world. And a lot of other really prestigious schools send their students to Syracuse's abroad programs. Had no idea. The London, which you can go study at the Globe, I mean, it's unbelievable. We actually were lucky enough, we could get our schedule into 3 days. It was still the full course schedule. It was very long, Monday through Wednesday, but then we had 4-day weekends to go explore Europe and get into, see theater in London and whatnot. And the university also encouraged us and sponsored trips all around the UK and whatnot. And it was just phenomenal. It was one of the best experiences I've also had. The other one, I'll just talk about great experiences, the university singers. So I was showing Elisa, I still have this picture on my desk. And I only did it senior year, but I wish I did it all of the years because Dr. Warren is, who's the director, is still there, is phenomenal. And they just sounded so good. So I can't say enough good things about that. As far as a regret, I think this might be even structural issue, but musical theater program, you have to take a lot of dance. And I get why, and I understand why. I'm not a dancer, just I'm never going to be. I can tap because I'm rhythmic, but that's about it. And if I could have taken composition classes instead of whatever, because I'm still, no one cares. I'm a business guy right now, but I'm also writing a musical with a friend who works at Disney Animation just because we had all this free time at COVID. So we figured, let's have a deliverable at the end. I have no idea if it's going to work. It's just a fun thing that we're doing, but I think that would have just been more interesting to me. But I don't know. I don't have many regrets. I kept falling into things and getting surprised along the way. So.
Thank you, Eric. What you didn't tell them, it is very, very hard to audition and get a spot at University Singer. So it also is a testimony to your musical abilities. So I'm glad you had a chance to do that. And composition lessons, we have several composers here. Maybe you can just have a little informal conversation with them. That's great. Keith,
yes.
I'm going to try to repeat the question because that was a long time ago, right? So it's about most memorable experience that you had here at SU that you could share with us. if you have any regrets, and what is that you're most proud of this experience. You can talk about your son too if you want. Don't you have a son here? A child here?
I do have a son. Yeah, I just watched him walk back from his baseball game. So it's funny you said that. Yeah, I'm going to tell a small story that just always sticks with me. I absolutely loved my time at ComDesign. We at the time we were all together on campus, and it was just an incredible experience. We worked hard, we worked late. There was a camaraderie, I always believed, with the comm designers. The time we spent in studio and sharing ideas, pushing each other, that sticks with me. And as a business owner, I try to replicate that culture right now in my firm, because I think the best, whether you work at a design firm or an advertising agency or an architectural firm, you're always trying to create a school-like environment where people, I believe creative people are always looking to learn, to grow. They're looking to be pushed, inspired. That doesn't go away when you go out into the quote unquote real world. And that foundation was set up for me based on the way that the comm design program was originally formed. We worked from briefs. We had critiques. Our professors treated us like we were professionals and had very high expectations. So when I went out into the real world, it wasn't a surprise to me at all what the process was. We were prepared. And at times, at certain jobs, that we were better prepared than some of the folks who had been there and been working as professionals for a while. So I think that was one of the most valuable things I think I got from my Syracuse experience. If there was anything that I wish I could have taken advantage of more, it probably would have been, now that I'm, again, a business owner, maybe taking advantage of some business and finance classes, taking more courses to understand the business of marketing and design and advertising. I had to learn that along the way. So, my grad school, if you will, has been starting a company. And there's been, as you can imagine, it's difficult and fun, but also very hard and challenging. The other thing, as far as decisions go, I was accepted to some other schools, obviously, as you are. Pratt was on my list, CalArts was on my list, but going to Syracuse for me was the right decision, because I wanted more than just an art school. And to have an art school within a university made all the difference. The relationships that I have with people who are outside of VPA, being able to have that real university college environment, a campus filled with all types of people from all different majors, being able to talk about what you're doing and hear someone else talk about what they're doing and be inspired by it. I just thought was different than what I may have gotten from an education at Pratt. So, and I say that wholeheartedly. The university experience and just being around, the Stored campus and being around so many different types of people who are, looking and seeking different forms of education, really gave me sort of a holistic perspective of what the real world would be like and how to interact outside of my core competency. So I hope that answers the questions. I don't know, did I miss anything?
No, you answered the question so well, Keith. And I'm sitting here, and for all those of you who are just like soaking in what our distinguished panelists talking about, and just like learning from their experiences, and you may ask yourself, which is what I'm going to ask on your behalf to Keith. Keith, given that you are so accomplished, and the same it will come to Julia and Eric, you guys are, or you are all very accomplished in your fields, and you could have chosen not to be connected to Syracuse University and VPA. Why do you choose to join us today to talk about your experience, and why do you stay connected to Syracuse University and more specifically to VPA?
You want me to start?
Yes.
Oh, it may sound corny, but it's just true. I mean, this is my family. I truly believe that Syracuse University is my family. I felt it before I got on campus. Just being able to have conversations with, and back then it was brochures in the mail and phone calls. But I just felt this sense that they wanted me there. And then when I got there, again, I was lucky enough to work in. I would go to work study every day at Krause College, which is one of the most beautiful buildings I think I at the time certainly had ever seen. And just to be able to be around all the incredible humans who worked in that building, and hearing the music and seeing the young students in foundation come in and out, it just was this. It was a connection that I never lost, and to be honest, I still long for. I wish I wasn't so far away. I live in California now, because I would come by and go to games and be even more active than I am now. So it's again, it may sound corny, but it's a connection, and I do truly believe that Syracuse is my family.
Thank you. We are your family. We're here for you, for Julie, for Eric, for all the incoming students and the ones who leave, because we build stories and we build connections and relationships. And at the end, relationships are really, really important. So thank you, Keith. I'm going to ask Julie the same question.
I swear we didn't chat and get our answers together before, because to expand on everything Keith just said. So this is the wooden version of Krause College, the building he's talking about. And that's where I spent my 4 years there. It's sad to me that the way you guys had to apply, I don't know when you saw Syracuse, if you could even just come up and see it, but I saw Syracuse for the first time in the summer between junior and senior year. No one was really around on campus. It was a hot day. I was like, this is cool. My mother, they took the parents aside. My mom came out of her parent session. This is the most amazing place, Julie. And I was like, this is great. I came up in the fall for my audition, stayed at the Sheridan. It was like, you could smell the snow in the air. It was the first Syracuse basketball game of the year. I'm a huge sports fan before all of this, and loved Syracuse basketball. And we were walking across the quad at 7:00 at night to the Dome to go to the Syracuse game the night before my audition. And I just turned to my dad and I said, this is where I'm going to school. I hadn't had my audition yet. I hadn't gotten in yet. And I knew that this is where I wanted to be. From that experience and then going through it, why have I chosen to stay involved in VPA and Syracuse? It's family. It's at the risk of being too personal, my greatest fear in life always used to be that I'd have a child and they'd grow up to be 18 and they wouldn't want to go to Syracuse. And if people are like, what's your greatest fear? I'd always sort of joke and say that that's my greatest fear. Life has come along. I don't have children of my own. I have plenty of nieces and nephews and godchildren. So that sort of fear in its first state is off the table. But I said it in the very beginning. I wholeheartedly agree. I became the person I am through my family, like everything. We all had our upbringing. Syracuse made me into the person I am at work, gave me the confidence I have at work to keep getting a leg up in the music industry, moving myself along. And if I can help anyone along with that, the first time Syracuse had me come back to speak, I was still an assistant. And I loved that Syracuse, there's plenty of big dogs in the music industry that you want to come back and talk to the music industry program. But they also wanted somebody who was just right out of the university. So once you're in the college, can see, oh, this is what my life. I'm not going to just go run Atlantic Records. This is what my life is going to be the first couple years out. And I sat and said to that group of 100 that day, and it holds true today. If at the time we were getting resumes on fax machines, but if a resume comes through and it says Syracuse University, I'm going to put yours in the yes pile. And that's absolutely an unfair advantage, but that's how we all feel about each other. And if I can help out Syracuse grads along the way, we want to keep our big group, our big orange group growing out there. So that is, and for 21 21 years almost. I still come back. I'm speaking to one of Todd Herman's classes, MUI class in a couple weeks. When I can come to the university and do it. Keith, I do what you were just saying. I always somehow plan it around a basketball game. So I come and speak and then go to the game the next night, but I'm up for at least 2-3 games a year. I've been to all the Final Fours since I graduated. It's a special, special place once you graduate.
Thank you, Julie. I think what I'm learning from the three of you, and Eric will have a chance to talk soon, is that one thing that the three of you have in common is you're very generous with your time, generous with your ability to share your experiences. And there's nothing more touching to me than generosity. So I am just really grateful for the ability and your generosity in coming and talking to our prospective students. And it is an inspiration. So Eric, your turn to tell us why you remain connected to VPA, why you'll come back, and why you are generous with your time.
Sure. Look, Syracuse, the drama department, right? It's all undergrad, and I think because of that, we just got it's a really great education. Every brilliant professor, you got the time with them, and every professor was very generous with their time. That continued after school. So there are still professors that I see every few months out here. There's a couple that moved to LA that we have lunch with. There's a few that we email and we talk with. There just seems to be, like, the university seems to care, and more than some other places that I've been that are maybe a little larger, maybe their egos and management's a little bit higher, which just does exist. And I don't know the best way to describe it, but there's just this very nice willingness to always talk to someone or reach up the phone, and the community is very, very good. And again, I got my MBA at USC, and USC sells their alumni network. That's one of the big things they do, but it doesn't have the personal touch, I think, that Syracuse does. There's even like someone on the panel with me that's only a few years out of graduation. There's a younger and an older panel, and she was working for Quibi recently, as you may have known. That imploded in a big way. And, the dean, the assistant deans are already, talking to her and figuring out who they can put in touch with. Like, that doesn't happen at a lot of other places. And she hasn't been a student for a number of years. So I really believe in what we got, and the education that we got. And so I'm very willing to give back because I believe in it so much.
Thank you, Eric. And we're going to continue with you, because I'm going to ask the last question so we can open up for whoever has a question that really is pressing too. But just to kind of back here, what advice would you do to all of the people who have joined today who are planning to come to Syracuse?
Here's a great advice. Well, you decide if it's great or not, excuse me. But do not go to the university because of the university's ranking. Go to the university because of the ranking or the quality of the program and the major that you want to go to. And very often, I think people make the wrong decision and go to the wrong school because it's a more prestigious school, but then they actually don't get the better education, the better program. So look, I got into Vassar, I got into BC, I got into BU, I got into Swarthmore. Syracuse Drama and Musical Theater program was definitely the best education I could have gotten. And I am so much stronger in almost every meeting I have to take professionally because of that education. So really figure out what you want to do and try to make sure. And the good thing is you're all applied to VPA, so you're probably not undecided, and probably have some musical and musical things you want to do. So I think I'm rambling now, but I think that's my bit of advice.
Thank you, Eric. And because Keith was shaking his hand, I'm going to go straight to him. What advice would you give, Keith, to the incoming?
Well, first of all, what a great piece of advice. That is one of the things that I really dug into, in my considering Syracuse. But on top of that, I think you also have to be very open when you get here, because Syracuse VPA has so much to offer. I went in thinking I was going to, either be in fine arts or illustration. And after having a conversation with the professors in comm design, it really changed my world. And I fell in love with, and I know this is going to sound odd, but I fell in love with type. I fell in love with design. I fell in love with the possibility of what design can do. And as someone who had been drawing and painting his whole life, it was almost as if I had finally discovered what it was that I was meant to do by, just a few conversations with the heads of the department. So be really open. Sometimes we go in with a fixed mindset on what it is that we think we should be doing because we've been doing it our whole life. And then you find yourself, discovering something else, and you get out into the world, and yeah, at times you discover something else again, and that's okay. I think that's the beauty and journey of being an artist and a performer. We are creative human beings, and we have an ability to adapt to a lot of different things. So that'd be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. Julie.
So that is all incredible advice. I second all of that. And I guess too, when you get there, as much as, staying within VPA and you're in this safe zone of whatever you are in for, whether it's music or art or drama, theater. So somebody made this point earlier, that what I loved about it too is that it was part of this huge university, that not everybody was a musician. And again, some of us grow up in these worlds when you're so in tune on something, and to tune that skill to be able to get into something at the university level, you've spent a lot of your time doing it in high school and things like that. So like I said, like I sort of was in this music bubble my whole high school career, and then got into college, and then all of a sudden was on the same floor with athletes and journalism majors and doctors and like all education, all these different fields, and I got involved in so many things outside of music, still having the comfort zone of knowing that I could go to orchestra, I could be part of everything in the music world, but getting to draw on all these other experiences, going to the Dome, being in a huge football was good when I was there. Same with you, Keith. Sorry, the later years have not seen good football, but to be part of that huge university experience. And another thing, some of you may be looking at urban campuses, and I could not wait to move to New York, but I did not want to move to New York between 18 and 22. New York, LA, they are expensive places. They are expensive places to go out. You will have plenty of time from 22 on to like enjoy a city experience. I wanted to go to college to like get a slice at Varsity for $1 and like have that whole university experience, walking across campus, hearing the Krause chimes, go, being a part of something like that. Jumping right into like an urban campus was not so, I wanted to wait till after college for that. So I got involved in every way, shape, and form that I could through college, and all of those friendships and relationships, not all of them, but most of them still remain today. Professors, my Dr. Downing, the ear training professor there, still like wishing me a happy birthday, like still having these relationships 20 years later is incredible.
This is really great conversation. Did somebody want us to speak? It was Eric.
Quickly, my wife went to Storrs, Connecticut. That has no downtown. Syracuse at least does have, I think, a very decent downtown to have quite a bit of fun in. So it's not like because you're not in New York or LA, you don't have that aspect.
We do have a little downtown in Syracuse, and there's actually quite a bit of things going on. The pandemic has stalled a number of activities, but I think slowly we're gonna be able to go back to some more normalcy. I have a question here, and I'm going to just say it and ask it, and whoever, Julie, Eric, or Keith, whoever wants to answer can have a first dab, or we can go around. So what was the worst aspect of Syracuse in your opinion? And is there anything you would or could have done differently to change this?
I'll jump on that grenade. I don't know if it was the worst, but it was, for me at least, difficult. I came from California. I was very far away from home. And, it was, I came from a very small town as well. So it was difficult for me at first to sort of adapt to that distance, but I don't think that'd be different to anyone who's traveling, to a university or college or any sort from across country. Look, I'd be lying if I said that, if you don't like snow, Syracuse may not be for you, because we get our fair share. I certainly did my freshman year, but I started to embrace it, and it actually ended up being some of the things that I talk about most when I talk about Syracuse. So, look, freshman year is hard, and there are always going to be challenges, and I think it's a new chapter in life. But all in all, I don't know if I would consider anything a worst experience. There were just things that I think I had to, and most people have to overcome in going to college your first year. So that's the best I can answer it. I'm struggling to find the worst.
I usually say, Keith, that if a person from Brazil like me can survive in Syracuse,
Yeah.
pretty much anybody can survive. Layers, boots, and all the down coats that we have. It's possible. It's possible. Eric and Julie, would you like to take a tab on this one?
Just to second that, whenever you tell someone you went to Syracuse, their first reaction is always, "Oh, how did you survive that snow?" And it's not that, of course, it was there, whatever, but I don't sit back and look at my 4 years and go, "Oh my God, there was just snow every day. And how did it snows in the Northeast everywhere." So it's a little more in Syracuse, but I mean, through my years, I have heard people say, "Oh, that's too snowy. I want to go someplace warm." If that's why you're picking a school, then you should realign some things, because Syracuse, everything that it does have to offer, the weather, and you get through it together, and you all wear your puffy jackets and your boots, and you can make that all look cute too.
And this year we had 50 inches less snow. You know what it is? 50 inches less is a lot of less snow. So instead of 125, we got 70 some inches of snow. So it's not so bad.
I think my freshman year still holds the record for the most snow in Syracuse.
It was like 199, because I know there was a year that was 199. Wow.
I think that's the number. Yeah, it was something else.
All right. Eric, would you like to talk about the worst thing in your experience at Syracuse?
This is not why they tell us to come to these panels, but look, I think maybe one thing just to look out for, there was a year in the drama department when a bunch of people went to the fall to the GLOW program, and then not as many people signed up for the spring as usual, and then they cut the GLOW program because only 4 people signed up, and I think they needed at least 6 to 10, but they didn't tell those students until too late to go to the fall semester, so they lost it. So I guess that's the one big thing I'll bring up. I mean, just if you're going to go on these extracurriculars where there's not a lot of people and funding is, not just there and ubiquitous, just make sure that it's not going to be cut, or there's not going to be enough people. I don't think that's something that happens often. I think they actually fixed it so that doesn't happen again. So that it might not be an antiquated issue, but that's something that happened, just to look out for.
Thank you. There are 2 questions here. The last 2, I think, that we can address, and they're actually kind of specific. The first one is for Keith, and the second one I think I'm going to ask to Julie because it's about internship. But then Keith, somebody's asking if you could elaborate a little bit on the work-study experience.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, it was the first day of being on campus, and maybe the second day. And I was trying to decide, what work study I wanted to do, and I didn't want to work in Kimmel, and I didn't want to work too far off campus, and so I naively said, well, look, it looks like Cross College, the dean's office is offering work study. Let me see if I can get that opportunity. I literally just walked in. I met Joe Giacovelli, who is still a really good friend of mine, and she was the assistant to the dean at the time. It was Don Lansing who was the dean, and I walked in. I said, I heard you're offering a work study, and I would like to apply for it. And she laughed and then said yes, and I worked there all 4 years, and it was great. I got to that job in particular. I got to learn about all the different colleges because I was kind of running errands, right? I was doing all moving around and moving documents around, and got really close with the dean, and got really close with Joe and the assistant dean, and all of the heads of the various departments. And that was very helpful for me. I was very fortunate to get that job. But work study in general is, it's what you think it is. It's a job. It pays, it's helpful for me. It was helpful for me. It kept money in my pocket and helped me kind of get some of the things that I needed. Art school, specifically comm design, requires that you sometimes have to go out and buy things that aren't a part of the daily curriculum. You want to do other things. You have to pay for it. So work study was incredibly helpful in that way. And on top of that, I was very, very fortunate to be able to work inside my own college, right next to the dean.
Thank you. And Julie, if you could just talk briefly about internships, if you did any while you were at SU.
So I did my summer internship in Boston at the Boston Symphony, and then to fulfill my credits, there was the Cassatt String Quartet was in residency. It was a New York City-based string quartet in residency in maybe 4 weeks a semester. I'm trying to think, that was a long time ago now. And I basically student managed them and set up programs around the school, but also around the city of Syracuse. So in just an effort to make money as a college student, I nannied for a family that I somehow met, and out in DeWitt in East Syracuse, and they had kids in a junior school, high school, and so I just started making connections through schools and got the string quartet. So these schools didn't have string programs to come and do programs at the school, and so that I was able to do that all for internship credits. The internship programs now I think are much more involved, and we just had credits that I had to fulfill, and those were the two things that I did. I think students start getting internships much sooner now, as early as between freshman and sophomore year, because either they want them or they need to start fulfilling them. So just on the working side of it, being at Atlantic, which is Warner Music Group, and then Island, which is Universal Music Group, and then 300, we have our own internship program. All these colleges, or all these labels in the music side are very active. I've always gotten the information to be able to give to the Syracuse teachers, to get to you guys, of the links to be able to apply for the internships, things like that. I'm not sure. I think for the most part you do all, like if you have to go to New York or LA, I guess now there's that you do the internships then in the summer. So I'm not sure how many opportunities now there are during the school year for internships. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Julie. And I do want to say, Jenny is populating our chat with really, really relevant information. And we do have an Office of Academic and Career Advising and dedicated people who help connect you from your freshman year to the time that you graduate. You can come up with a plan, or you may be in an area and say, I really would like an experience in an internship in this area. And Patty Bevans is the person who heads that area. And she's fantastic in connecting our students with our alumni and finding opportunities for them. I do want to say there was a question here because we didn't talk much about communication and rhetorical studies. And it seems sometimes that because it's not in the visual and performing arts or in design, that it is not something that we value in VPA. En contraire, if we could say, our wonderful critical thinkers in communication and rhetorical studies are a very integral part of our college. And they are the ones questioning the status quo. They are the ones helping us to be better advocates in our communities. Some of our most outstanding students, university scholars, remembrances scholars, all come from the communication and rhetorical studies as well. So we didn't really focus. We didn't have an alumnus or former students from CRS, but I do want to assure you that communication and rhetorical studies is a very important part of who we are, even though they're not performing arts or design. Communication and rhetorical studies are our partners. The faculty is excellent, and the students are really movers and shakers, challenging every single thing that we do. We have a lot of challenges as a university, and I think we are a wonderful place where we all feel accepted, but we also need those students who will say, hey, that's kind of not right. Can we revisit that? And I know most of our students are equipped to do that from many different areas, but by design of discipline, our students in CRS are at the forefront of that. So I'm gonna give it back to Janie so she can wrap up our conversation. But I wanna thank Keith, Eric, and Julie for your generosity and for your time and for allowing us to learn a little bit more about what it means to have a profession in the performing visual arts and communication and design. And I do want to say that one thing that I know about the three of them is they're also very involved in their communities. They're working on things that help our society to be better. They're activists. They're really engaged into making this world a better place. So I thank all of you.
Thank you.
I echo Elisa's thanks, and I'm just so appreciative for the time that these wonderful alumni gave us today. And I also would like to wholeheartedly thank Elisa, Dr. Ducaney, for moderating this session. She is an amazing person that I get to work with every day, and I'm incredibly grateful for her and her work as well. I hope that today helped you envision the possibilities that you may find at Syracuse, and to elaborate on what Dr. Ducaney was saying. We have programs in art, transmedia, and communication and rhetorical studies that were not represented in panelists today, but we have a second alumni panel happening in a couple of weeks from now on April 24th. And we have panelists from those areas that will be speaking on that day. So I invite all of you to join us again and hear about their experiences. And perhaps if you were admitted to one of those majors, learn a little bit more about the more specific experience you might have in studying those areas. I offer my congratulations to all of you. I hope that we will get to see you this fall, that you will be joining the amazing community that is VPA and Syracuse University. And please do know you can reach out to me at any time if you have questions, concerns, you want to talk in more detail. I would love to connect. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you again to our panelists and to our moderator. And I hope everyone can have a wonderful afternoon, and that we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jenny.